Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Pastor Scott Show. I am Pastor Scott. That's why I'm on the show. Go to pastorscottshow.com, pastorscottshow.com to connect with us online. Phone number to join the conversation is 888-528-2557, 888-528-2557. We talk about issues of the day from a Christian perspective. Special announcement, in case you don't realize it, this Sunday is Mother's Day. It's coming up very, very quickly. This Sunday is Mother's Day, so you still have a few days to make some good plans, get a gift, think about what you're going to do for your mom or the maybe there's moms that you know in case your mom is no longer with us or whatever the case is. And, how do we deal with the emotional and different tensions that come along with this day in our churches and with the fact that there are different kinds of moms, people who can't be moms, and lots of different things. With me to talk about it is Deana Thayer. She is a marriage and family and parenting associate from Focus on the Family. Deana, welcome back to the Pastor Scott Show.
Well, thanks for having me. It's always nice to be with you. I'm glad to be here.
Well, great to be with you. Happy Mother's Day.
Thank you.
Yeah. So what is your plan for Mother's Day? You have kids. Are they still at home or are they out? Well, how does it work for you?
Great question. So all of our kids are launched, but I'm looking forward to this particular Mother's Day because I'm headed out of town to celebrate my doctoral commencement, and my parents are coming. So I'm actually going to be with my mom on Mother's Day.
That's awesome.
Which has not been the case in years. So that'll be a treat.
Congratulations on you're getting your doctorate.
Yes, that's right.
Wow.
I'm looking forward. It's so great that it's in my rearview mirror now. I can't wait to celebrate.
That is good. Well, that's a great accomplishment. So it's going to be a great Mother's Day for you. You're a mom, and you've got a great accomplishment and all of that. Well, that sounds really great. That's really good. My mom's in Phoenix. They're coming out the next weekend, so we'll probably do Mother's Day while they're out here. Mother's Day it's a lot different than Father's Day. For a lot of different reasons. One of my sons is going to church camp on Father's Day weekend, which I thought it's entirely odd that they even schedule that over Father's Day weekend.
That's fascinating.
But you know what? It's like, okay, we'll do something else later. And if I can get my other son to go somewhere, then Christy and I will go out. And that's how I look at it. But I think if church camp was during Mother's Day weekend, it would be a disaster for that church. Right, it would just
probably wouldn't go very well.
I think there would be a meeting, right?
Yes, no, I think you're right.
Yeah. So what makes Mother's Day the most meaningful for moms, but also makes it hard for many other women?
Well, it's meaningful because they finally have a day set aside to acknowledge all the hard work, right, that goes on behind the scenes. Moms are tired, they're busy. They're doing everything from helping with homework to buckling car seats to sometimes combing lice out of kids' hair. I mean, there's any number of things.
Right.
And so that day is meaningful. I think what makes it a little bit fraught, though, is there's so many layers. And I think you're right. For the men, it can be a bit different. My husband's content to say it's a day where maybe I don't have to cook and I can watch golf. I mean, there's just not as much wrapped up in it. Whereas for moms, there's so much sometimes of even our identity that gets tied into that motherhood piece. And so you've got whole categories of people for whom that day is painful. Maybe they're estranged from their own mother or she's passed away. And so there's some grief there. Maybe they're longing to be a mother and are struggling with fertility issues, and that's some pain, or they've had a stillbirth or a miscarriage. And so this feels like a day that just is bringing that even more to the forefront and kind of bringing their pain right into their face. So that's really hard. And then you have those kind of non-traditional moms. I'm one of those. I'm a stepmom as well as a biological mom. There's people who've adopted and carried embryos. There's adoptive moms, foster moms, sometimes a relative that's acting as a caregiver, maybe an auntie or a grandma. And so it's a day that kind of has a lot of layers because sometimes those categories of moms that I just mentioned really don't feel acknowledged. They feel a little bit marginalized and put off to the side. And I think particularly if you're a Christian and you have a biblical worldview, I think the church can and should do better. And so I love getting to talk about this because I think it's important that we call out all those women acting as caregivers for children and help them feel special and celebrated, while also acknowledging the pain of maybe those without a mom or those who wish they were a mom.
That I think it affects so many different people in different ways. When I was a pastor, when you have these days, Mother's Day and Father's Day, there is this sense where you want to celebrate the moms and do something for moms. But many years ago, I think the decision was made in a lot of churches, and we did this. We're just going to celebrate the ladies in the church just because of
Mm.
those things going on. But at the same time, you don't want to not acknowledge that there are mothers, in the church, and that's a special thing. So how can churches or even just people who attend church this Sunday be sensitive to the different dynamics that are going on there?
That's so important. Thank you for this question. There's lots of ways to do it. Of course, it's very powerful if it comes from the pulpit, but that's not always possible. But if there's a pastor that's willing to mention, hey, if you're a mom, and maybe mention some of those other ones, adoptive, foster, or if you're acting as a mom, if you're a caregiver, acknowledge all of those folks. I think that really helps because I think our vocabulary matters. If you just say all moms, you're going to have people who are still sitting in their chair or in the pew thinking, well, that's not me because I'm auntie and I've taken in
Hmm.
my nieces and nephews or whatever it is. So being careful with the verbiage, I think, is one piece, but also there's just ways to be sensitive and maybe even create a space if it's off the side of the lobby in the church or whatever it might be where moms can go and have a coffee or there's we had a wonderful experience. Our church back in Washington State had a year where the moms and all caregivers could come and make themselves a little bouquet. And you could just come to the booth, make your little bouquet. There was nothing called out. Another one, and in our digital age, I think this could be powerful, is if the church isn't quite sure that saying something for them, or maybe they don't have the means for one of these other ideas to send all the ladies home with a treat. Most churches now do have some form of social media presence.
Hmm.
So is there a way that you create a thoughtful post or a reel or a video that acknowledges these different categories and loves on those who are hurting and celebrates those who normally don't feel celebrated? Our church here in Colorado Springs is doing an Instagram post that'll be a carousel. And I love how thoughtful this was. For each specific category, they had a person in that situation write the blessing. So it's just a post full of blessings. I wrote the one for stepmoms, and there's ones for moms who are struggling with fertility, etc. And that's a place people can go if they're following that church's social media account and at least feel, oh wow, I feel seen, I feel heard,
Yeah.
and there's a little something for me. So there's ways to do it, but it's an ongoing challenge, and I just encourage churches to continue to think outside the box and be creative to love these women well.
This is the Pastor Scott Show. My guest is Deana Thayer. She's with Focus on the Family. We're talking about Mother's Day that's coming up this coming Sunday. In case you were not aware, it's this Sunday. So giving you a couple of days to catch up and realize that. When we'll talk about maybe people's individual families in a second. As you're talking about that, how do we encourage people who come who maybe they haven't been able to be a mom, like you said, or other, and they have a lot of different issues, or maybe their mom's passed away, or their mom wasn't a very good mom or abusive, right? There's all kinds of
Mhm.
those kinds of things going on. How do we also help them to even celebrate the fact that some people are moms, like to turn it around and say, you know what? We have to acknowledge, hey, there's all kinds of feelings for today, but we should also be grateful and happy for those people who do have that relationship going on today. How would you give that encouragement?
Yeah, this is honestly, I think this is hard because we
Yeah,
know even scripture encourage us rejoice with those who rejoice.
that's right.
And we want to encourage a posture of that. That's the heart of a believer. If you're a Christ follower, you should be able to somehow, muster up some joy for the other people. But guess what? The reality is we're also in a fallen world. And I think, and even know some people for whom they actually don't go to church on Mother's Day because they're just expecting it to dredge up pain.
Hmm.
So I think it's a little bit of holding this both and.
Yeah.
If you're able to have a posture of rejoicing with those moms and caregivers and being able to say, I'm so glad that sometimes that functions in a healthy way, and I'm going to show up and celebrate that, then please do that. That's a really honoring choice. At the same time, I think we need to at least have space for the people who say, that day's going to be rough for me. And I don't know how to step into that in a way that's going to be healthy or positive, and I need to take a break. And so I think churches also need to be really available, especially on that day, to talk about what are the resources that we have available for that. Do you have a bereaved group or a grief share group?
Hmm.
Do you have something for moms who've experienced pregnancy or infant loss? And make sure those things are really prevalent and at the forefront that day, whether they're on display at one of your Connect centers for guests or whatever it might be, to just have grace, because for some that day is hard, and I don't know that everyone can get to that posture of the celebrating the others. It's a beautiful thing when that can happen, but we
Yeah.
also have to recognize the reality. And that's the challenge, right? With being in a fallen world, there's still
Yeah.
brokenness. And how do we love people well and not sweep that under the rug while
And I,
encouraging
and I
the
think it gets
posture you suggested?
right. I think it gets into another subject that would be great to talk about sometime. But you mentioned rejoice with those who rejoice. I think we skip that when we go to mourn with those who mourn because we think about funerals and things that people are going
Yes.
through. But rejoicing with those who rejoice is hard. That's a hard thing, right? And it's another subject, really. But it is something that we're to strive for in the same way, and that's a hard
Yes,
thing, I think, for all of us. It's interesting though how hard that is sometimes
it
for different
is.
reasons. Mother's
It's rough.
Day is coming up, and when in your practice in your career, what's the difference maybe between how moms feel today about raising their kids than maybe they have in the past 20 or 30 years? You may not be old enough for that, but uh, is it different today in the digital age, social media, different kinds of pressures, or is it the same with just different kinds of pressures?
I mean, I think it is different. I think parents now are really parenting into uncharted territory.
Mm,
They're having to parent things they didn't grow up with, at least
that's
my
right.
generation. I didn't grow up with a cell phone in my pocket and all of that, but I'm having to parent into that. And so that is very tricky. Now we have the generation below me and Gen Z, they're parenting into a space they also grew up in. So that's a little bit different. But certainly, at least for Gen X, we have a whole crop of moms who are saying, I didn't have this, but I have to somehow parent it. That's really challenging, and I think it does add some unique pressures and can contribute to some of the exhaustion. But we've also seen good things in the past 20, 30 years, which is an emphasis on, hey, it's not selfish to take good care of yourself. We often talk about love your neighbor, but we skip the as yourself
Hmm.
and forget that even in scripture we're told, hey, you also matter. And so to take a day to set it aside for moms, I think is powerful in that way too, where we get to model, hey, caring for yourself isn't bad. You can't pour from an empty cup. You've got to put on your own oxygen mask first, all of those things. And that's really beautiful, even though, yes, the parenting is so different and there are some unique challenges, particularly with the digital age and social media and all that that brings.
It's so weird because when my kids say, what was it like when you were my age? And well, nothing like it was like for you. You know,
Right?
I was outside riding my bike someplace when my parents had no idea where I was. Right? It's just
Yes.
a whole different world. They had commercials on TV at 10 o'clock saying, "Do you know where your children are?" Which is real,
Right?
right?
Yeah,
Uh,
completely different.
yeah. Now you have a digital tracker on your child. You know exactly where they are. Um,
You know.
so Mother's Day, one of the things I hear from a lot of moms today is the sense of I'm failing at this, that I
Mm.
am not a raising my kids right. Even if that's not true, your kids might be great students following the Lord, on that end, or that they've got struggles and other things, and there's a lot of sort of self-blame. What would you say to that mom who's thinking that today? I'm failing at this. How would we encourage them?
I think the big encouragement is, first of all, mostly that's just not true. I mean, moms who are just showing up and even meeting their kids' basic needs, hey, you're crushing it. You're keeping a person alive, right? I remember feeling surprised by that. I put this baby in my arms and it's like, oh, wait, I'm responsible to keep a person alive. What in the world? And moms can feel so beat down. And also, again, with the digital stuff, we're in this age of Pinterest and the perfect sandwiches cut into little, butterfly
A
shapes and all of the
charcuterie
things.
board.
Yes, and so moms can feel like, if I'm not doing these specific things, my house isn't decorated this way, I didn't make the school lunches like this, I didn't make their costume for the school play, then somehow they're a failure. When the truth is, if you are instilling good character in your children, you're spending time teaching them about the Lord, you're taking them to church, you're making sure their needs are met, you know what? You're doing a pretty great job. And I think moms who get into that get this mom guilt, and
Mm.
that stinks because sometimes women will even bring that to each other, want to show each other up. And so I just encourage moms, don't compare yourself to others. That's that game, you'll never win that game. And secondly, that especially if you're operating from a biblical paradigm, which we can talk about on this show, your worth is in your identity in Christ. And you've been entrusted with these children. That's not a mistake. So stewarding that gift well does matter, but trying to compare yourself to all these earthly standards, you're never going to measure up. And so actually Focus on the Family right now is doing a little 7-day mom sparkle challenge for moms just like this who feel like I've lost my sparkle, I'm beat down, I'm tired, and just need a little bit of something. It started last week, but hey, like you said, there's still a few days left. So moms who just want some great tips to show up well when you're tired, or you want to get back in the game and show up positively, you can just check that out. It's focusonthefamily.com/mom.
All right, focusonthefamily.com/mom. Mom sparkle, you say.
Yes, get the sparkle back, because momming is exhausting, and we want to
Yeah.
acknowledge that.
I think a lot of moms are responding well to that right now. This is the Pastor Scott Show. Go to pastorscottshow.com to connect with us online, podcast, and more you can find there. My guest is Deana Thayer. She's with Focus on the Family. We're talking about Mother's Day that's coming up this Sunday. And I want to work our way back to that website, and I'll tell you about that here in just a moment. So for people right now who are thinking about their mom, or maybe they're thinking about their wife or that woman in their life that they want to acknowledge this weekend, what are some things that moms really need? Because maybe they don't say. I
Yeah,
think
sometimes they don't.
in some ways, Dad, we don't even care. But moms care, but they don't always say.
They do.
So
Yes,
what is
they
it
don't.
that they're not saying that we need to hear?
Well, breaks from the day to day are really powerful.
Hmm.
Whether it's just saying, you know what, you get a day off of any meal prep today, or I don't want you cleaning up after this meal, or when the kids built a couch fort in the living room, I'm going to take care of that. That break from the mundane, so that it really does feel like, hey, today I'm being celebrated. This is refreshment. We want to refresh moms. They need to have their energy renewed. So I think that's really powerful, building in those breaks. Hey, why don't you go on a walk? I've got this, whatever it might be. I've got the kids for a little bit. But the other thing that's really powerful, especially if you're a spouse and you've got someone in your life who's caregiving in this way, or is a bio mom, adoptive mom, etc., don't be afraid to ask, hey, I want to get this right. What would be meaningful to you? If you know her love language is verbal affirmation, maybe you write a letter about what a great mom she is and just encourage her in that way. If you know that it's acts of service, step in, do the dishes. If she's a person who values quality time, see if you can plan a little experience away or have a special date night later that week, because it's valuable when you love the person in the way they can receive it. So don't be afraid to ask. I think moms also appreciate that.
And go ahead and ask. And if she doesn't say, or she says, oh, you don't have to do anything, that's not true.
It's false.
It's false.
Advertising.
It's a lie.
Yes,
Don't call her a liar, but
something.
that is not true. She wants something. Well, Deana, at Focus on the Family, there's a lot of resources. You talked about the Mom Sparkle. Tell us again how people can find that.
Yes. If you're interested in getting in on the last few days of the 7-day Mom Sparkle Challenge, just go to focusonthefamily.com/mom. It's a rhyme, .com/mom. And you can find out about the challenge there, sign up, get some great tips to help, again, just show up, get your sparkle back, feel better as you parent into the coming weeks.
And so it's a few days the Mom Sparkle, it's where you get refreshed. Is that what it is? Get your
There's
sparkle
some
back.
tips, specific tips for just how you can maybe make little shifts in your parenting to show up as you want to as a mom, because we know moms are tired. And so that 7-day Mom Sparkle Challenge is there, but that page also has lovely other resources, a little podcast series we did for moms with Erin Smalley, some great stuff. So check it out, focusonthefamily.com/mom.
And there's some other things on there, even for Dad. Help her sparkle, because we need a clue.
Yes.
And for kids, I'm going to check on these later, because I already told my kids.
Get some ideas.
We are doing something for Mother's Day on purpose this year. We are not going to Costco Sunday morning to find something to do. You know what? This is such an important thing, and I hope that you have a very good Mother's Day, Deana. Always good to have you on the Pastor Scott Show.
Thank you. Always a pleasure to be here.
And congratulations once again on your degree. What's your degree and your doctorate?
It's a doctorate of education, so an EDD in educational leadership. So it'll be beautiful for my work at Focus and my ministry with blended families.
Well, good for you. I guess the next time you come on, we'll have to call you Dr. Deana Thayer.
That would be super fun.
All right. Well, so we'll make a note of that. Make sure to remind me next time you're on the show. All right. Thank you again for being with me on the Pastor Scott Show. Once again, go to focusonthefamily.com, go to focusonthefamily.com/mom, or you can just go there and Google in the Mom Sparkle, and you will find the page and all of that great stuff on there to help you with Mother's Day. Great resource there. All right, this is the Pastor Scott Show. Go to pastorscottshow.com to connect with us online, podcast, social media, and live stream. All of those links are at pastorscottshow.com. We will be back as the Pastor Scott Show continues. Stay tuned. Welcome back, everybody. We are live on Wednesday on the Pastor Scott Show. Go to pastorscottshow.com to connect with us online. Let's go to number 17.
So my kids are 8 and 5, and I finally decided to be honest for the first time in my life. Their dad was like, all right, what do you want for Mother's Day? And I was like, you really want to know? He's like, just tell me what you want. Just tell me what you want. I'm like, fine. I love the plastic flowers from Dollar Store, but I'm just going to be honest with you. This is what I want, and this goes for every holiday. I want you and the kids to leave. That's what I want. I want to take a shower by myself, okay? I want to shave both legs at one time, because I have a toddler, and you have a toddler too if your kid's under 15, all right, you know? But I got a little one, and I'm trying to take a shower, right? And you've seen Psycho, and there's like a little Norman Bates outside the shower curtain. What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? It's like I was trying to take a shower. I want to eat a meal with both hands, all right? I want to watch a show that doesn't have a purple dinosaur singing. That's what I'm doing.
That is Carrie Pomeroli, who you've seen at Salem events before, talking about Mother's Day. Mother's Day is this Sunday, like we've been talking about. Are you ready for that? Did you know that? Trying to give you some heads up here, everybody, just in case you didn't know. Moms know already, but dads and you might not have realized that your mom is thinking about something wherever you're at. So I want to ask the moms today, and dads, you can chime in if you have any insight. What is it that you actually want for Mother's Day? Because I do think that a lot of moms actually just say, oh, whatever, I just want to be with people. But I think you want something. You know, is it an item or is there something you don't want? Maybe that's also part of the same question. Like the flowers. Do you want flowers or is that a waste of money? Flowers are expensive these days, really expensive. And then they only last for a few days most of the time. So, ladies, what do you want for Mother's Day? 888-528-2557 is the number. 888-528-2557. What do you want or what do you not want? 888-528-2557. And maybe you can also share, what is the best Mother's Day you've ever had, best gift or day you were given? Maybe the worst. That's harder because, maybe whoever gave it to you is listening, right? So you got to be careful. Maybe you got to use a fake name and disguise your voice, or something like that.
I'm the bad guy?
Sometimes people realize that all of a sudden. But Mom's Day is coming up. So what do you really want? 888-528-2557. 888-528-2557. And I've got questions about, have things changed? Because it used to be flowers, fine. A card, fine. Do you want to go to brunch? Like, do you want to leave the house or go after church and go have brunch somewhere in a restaurant, pay a bunch of money for that? Or would you rather have something brought into the house or you actually, eat at home and you don't fix it, but your kids or dad fixes it? How does this work? What would you like? 888-528-2557. I want to clarify for the Pastor Scott Show audience, what is the best Mother's Day? What is it? Since we have a few days to work it out, there's still time to get something on Amazon, probably get delivered in time, especially if you have like their free shipping Prime deal. You can still get to Costco. You can still do all the stuff. I think there's time. Right? 888-528-2557. 888-528-2557. Jose, what do you do for your Mother's Day? Like, what do you think your mom wants for Mother's Day?
Probably take her out to eat, get her like a perfume from Macy's. I think that's pretty much it. Very simple.
Now, do you feel like, are you doing that and she just is, and I've met your mom, she's very kind and she would appreciate whatever you do for her, right? But is she thinking, I wish he would really get me this?
No, because...
And she would never say.
I feel like she's very direct in what she wants.
Mm-hmm.
So if I get her something that she didn't ask for, she'll be like, oh, thank you. But in my head, I'm like, I know you don't like that. I
Did
should
she ask you for the receipt? Did you keep the receipt for this?
She probably would if I got her something she didn't want.
I guess so. Moms, have you ever returned a Mother's Day gift? I'll bet that's happened before. I wonder if that's a thing. I used to do retail all the time. I don't remember Mother's Day being a big return day, but maybe secretly, privately, that has been done a couple of times. 888-528-2557. What do you think is the right thing to do for Mother's Day? And maybe even for your church. We talked about that with Deana Thayer, our guest, a moment ago. Does your church do something for Mother's Day? What's the best thing to do? Because there are complicated things. You've got people whose mother has passed away, people who maybe they don't have a great relationship with their mom, people who are unable to have kids and won't be a mom. All of those dynamics enter into it. So what does your church do for Mother's Day? 888-528-2557. 888-528-2557. See, I'm curious about the old standards. Do you want a card? Like you go to the do they even still have card stores? We used to go to the Hallmark store. Now it's a TV station, but they used to have actual stores. Do they still? I think they probably do. I don't know, though. I was in the mall, looking for something for my wife. I did not find a Hallmark store. They used to have, in fact, I found no card store of any kind where you just go and they used to have like cards, greeting cards. I found nothing. I had to go to over to, I won't say what the name of the store is, but it's the big box store with a Target on the front. I had to go in there.
Last time I saw a Hallmark was in the Northridge Mall. So people in the Valley, correct me if I'm wrong, but remember, right near Wood Ranch, right near like California Pizza, there's like an outdoor area. There's like a Hallmark right there in the corner. It used to be a Disney store, but then
I remember those.
Yeah, it kind of transformed to, or maybe it was separate. But there was a Hallmark store there, but now it's not there no more. At least I think.
Right. Everything's changed, right? So I wonder, because it used to be like, I feel like the store was called Papyrus. Like that's where you go and you buy the fancy cards. Like the cards come in all the cellophane wrap, and they're like $17 for the same greeting card that's $3.95 at the Hallmark. You get that, and it comes with a little sticker, the little round sticker, so you don't have to lick the envelope. You just put the little gold sticker on it, and do that. I think those are gone too. I haven't seen one of those for a long time. So Mother's Day is coming up. It's this Sunday, and what's the best thing to do for your mom? And if you're a mom, call up and say, what is your best Mother's Day? What is your best Mother's Day gift? 888-528-2557. 888-528-2557. See, and I'm wondering, are flowers what you want, or would you rather have something else? Would you rather go to brunch or have somebody make you food at home? Would you rather have a card? Like, are you a card person, or are those days over? Is that why there's no Hallmark and there's no Papyrus and those stores are gone? Those stationary stores like that, they're just not here. Is that because people don't do that anymore? What about candles? Lots of candles out there. Is a candle a worthy Mother's Day gift, or is it just not really what you want? What about one of those fancy candles? It's got like the wood wick. I used to get those, and it sounds like you're at a campfire. It'll crinkle like that. I like those, and Christy liked those for a long time, but I don't know if she would still be into that. And I feel like maybe that's not even the right direction, or some kind of gift. What is it that moms want that you really want, actually? 888-528-2557. Jose's going to get his mom tickets for the high-speed rail because she's always wanted to see Merced in Bakersfield. You know what? She's going to be on a waiting list for a long time. I feel like that one is that one. I found, in fact, somebody sent me today. It's a Lego set. It's the most expensive Lego set there is. And it is the California high-speed rail. And it comes with 0 pieces. It's just a picture of an open field.
I take offense at our policies and strategies.
All right, so what do you really want for Mother's Day? 888-528-2557. Marge in Montebello, welcome to the Pastor Scott Show.
Thank you, Pastor Scott. Yeah, so I'm not particularly a very materialistic person. Things don't really move me as much. But I wanted to share about one time where my Mother's Day was just like the worst ever. My son was on this kick of not celebrating any holidays at all. not Mother's Day. My husband was not in a good place at the time. And I remember getting in my car and just driving aimlessly the whole entire day. I got on Harbor Boulevard in Brea, and I just took it all the way down till I got to Balboa Island. And honestly, I cried probably the entire time on that drive.
Well, that is a terrible Mother's Day. Now, did they get better?
Well, they did get better. They did get better after that. And the thing is, you were talking about cards. And for me, it's not so much the style of the card, the price of the card, because they can be expensive.
Yeah.
But it's what you write inside. And we have a very creative family. My husband, my son, myself, we're all creative. We're all creative with words and in many ways. And I've gotten the most beautiful poems and kind words written in some of these cards that I absolutely cherish.
Wow. Well, you know what? That's a better side of it. I'm glad that it got better. I think sometimes there's some off years, with that for various things. So your son got back on board with some gift giving anyway, at least Mother's Day.
Yeah, and if it's just a card or a piece of jewelry, he's always given me little earrings. He knows I like different kind of earrings. My husband kind of gave up on buying me gifts because he would buy me stuff that he liked, not that I liked, but that he thought I would like.
He got you a bowling ball or something?
Yeah.
Look, I got you a Nintendo game.
Like, oh, thank you. But yeah, it did get better, and and I think just knowing that I went through that experience, because I did share with them after. I mean, I stayed out the whole night, and I literally cried like I hadn't sobbed in forever.
Wow, a lot came up that day. Well, I'm glad it got better from there. And you know what? There's probably women listening right now who have had the same type of day before. Yeah,
you feel very lonely. And it's not that I felt unappreciated or anything like that. I've never been one to starve for recognition or, accolades or anything like that. I do a lot of volunteer work. I'm okay not getting recognized, but something just hit different.
Yeah.
I think it was just a lack of the lack of, kind of any motivation to do anything at all.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. See, well, I appreciate you sharing that because sometimes ladies say, oh, don't do anything, and nobody means that. And then sometimes the husbands or kids said, well, Mom, you said don't do anything, so I didn't. We should never fall for that.
And you can be disappointed, but don't get discouraged because it can get better.
It can. Well,
just being honest.
Yeah, Marge, I think that's great. That's great. Thank you for sharing your story with all of that. 888-528-2557. Best and worst Mother's Day. What do you really want? Sherry, Tony, and others will get your calls when the Pastor Scott Show continues in a moment. Stay tuned. Welcome back, everybody. We're live on the Pastor Scott Show. Go to 19.2.
And then I tried to do it last night. I had 3 shows last night, so by the time I was at the hotel, it was already the next day. It's like 1 a.m, and I was like, I looked online, every place was like 1-day delivery. You have to do it, and I'm like, but it's still, but I'm trying to do like time zone math, and I'm like, but, and then the only other option was to Uber Eats her flowers. And I'm like, is that more disrespectful than just not getting her flowers? And then an Uber Eats driver just dropping it off at the doorstep, taking a photo of it, and then leaving. So I'm like, I'll catch her when I get back.
That's a comedian named Zoltan, and talking about Mother's Day and how he was late. And he thought he'd get his mom flowers, but he was at the last minute. And you can Uber Eats the flowers. I'll take a little picture of it. You get an email seeing it sitting at their door, knocked over probably by the neighbor's cat or something. What is the best Mother's Day gift? Mother's Day is a few days away. What is it, ladies, that you really want for Mother's Day? That maybe you're not going to say it, but you really would like your kids or your husband to figure it out. What do you really want? And maybe what's an example of the best or the worst Mother's Day gift you've ever had or Mother's Day you've ever had? 888-528-2557, 888-528-2557. Sherry in Santa Clarita, welcome to the Pastor Scott Show.
Hey, Pastor Scott, good to talk with you. Just real quick, there is a Hallmark store, a really cool one in Santa Clarita on Sierra Highway.
Wow, it's still there?
Yes, it's
All
still
right.
there and it's flourishing. And as far as what I want for Mother's Day, I'll be 75 and I have enough stuff. And I was going through an Avon book actually, and I saw a picture that they had for their advertisement, and it was what I hope it to be is my son, his 20-year-old daughter, and his 2.5-year-old daughter laying on the floor with cheek to cheek, like stacking their heads. That would be a great photo. And so I cut it out, and I said, that's what I want.
And so you want a photo, or you want them to actually come over to your house and lay on top of each other and put their hands on the cheeks and just sit there on your floor?
Oh, well, that would be fun, too. But a photo would do really well.
You know what? I think that's really good. I think it's a good message to have enough stuff. Yeah, at some point, what? My wife does not want, probably an item necessarily, because it's what she says is it's something else to dust.
Yeah.
But it used to be, everybody wanted stuff, probably a lot of our parents, they've got a bunch of Hummels that they think are worth a lot of money, and they're not, that are floating around out there.
And absolutely. A lot of stuff isn't worth it now.
Right. Used to be, but not anymore, because somebody decided you have to dust it. And, well, Sherry, that's pretty good advice. I think a photo, like a photo of grandkids, photo of the family, something that's updated.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's a big deal.
What I do, too, is I always tag the back of my stuff that's worthwhile, the back of my pictures, the date, and who's in it, because someday they're going to be sitting there wondering, when did she take this? Because I won't be there to tell them.
That's a real good idea. Always put that on the back of the photo.
Yeah.
Because even grandkids later, like, who is this? Is this grandma? Those things can last forever, and they're really important to grandkids and great-grandkids later, and they don't know who that is.
It is. Yeah. And I noticed in this generation coming up, they're not as interested in the genealogy set, of where they came from and who was back then and all that. It seems to be drifting apart.
Yeah, I think they get there when it's later. And the weird part, when they get older, and the weird part is that now there's not some random photo in a box. There's 700 million photos on a digital file somewhere. See, and it's discouraging to go through that. Yeah. Sherry, thanks for calling the Pastor Scott Show. A photo is a great idea. What is the best gift for Mother's Day? Or maybe what's the worst gift? Give somebody a warning about that. 888-528-2557. Tony and Irvine, welcome to the Pastor Scott Show.
Can you hear me okay? Because I'm in my car.
I hear you perfectly, Tony.
Okay, good. I love your show. You are the best. I could call you every week on talking different subjects.
Thank you.
Love it. Anyway, so Mother's Day, both of my sons have gone to heaven. I just turned 80, and my sons were in their 50s. I have a daughter that's 42, and she's living in Texas taking care of her dad. And she never wants to have kids, so her dogs are her kids. But I love getting cards, and I have a box with all the cards that my kids have written to me, and I can go back and read all those things that my son wrote to me. And for me, staying home, having a barbecue, and just relaxing and togetherness, family being together is so important. So this Sunday, I'm in a wonderful church. Tremendous support, a lot of young couples. They all treat me like their mother, and I am so blessed. So this Sunday, I'm going to volunteer in the children's church so some of the mothers can sit in the service. Oh. And I live in a senior apartment complex with a lot of elderly people that don't have families come visit them. So there's a couple of ladies, God's put it on my heart to take them flowers. And there's lots of parents that are estranged from their kids, and sometimes it could be a tough season. So yeah. I just want to give back. I don't need anything. I've collected angels, and I said to the kids, stop giving me angels. I don't have the room for them anymore.
And you got to dust them.
Right, that's right.
Well,
I'm just grateful that, for me, I'm a gift giver. I love to give things that are meaningful. My older son made sure every time he gave me a gift, it was so meaningful.
Yeah.
And my daughter has been the same way. So I do have those neat memories. And I take a lot of pictures. So, nowadays these kids are doing text messages and photos on the phone. And it's just different. I just said to my daughter, my birthday was in March. I said, send me a card. Write me something on a card. She goes, Mom, I sent you a text.
Great to text.
It's not the same thing.
It's not the same thing. And I think that's good for people to hear because maybe the sender thinks it's just as good, but it's not. It's about the receiver.
And you know what? They could go to Trader Joe's and buy me a card. I don't care. Just write me the sentiment. That's all I care about.
Yeah, Tony, thank you for calling and sharing. And, thank you for being so conscientious about other ladies and moms and on a day like today. Because you're right. We all have neighbors who maybe they're not going to hear from their kids, or maybe there's family circumstance, or maybe their kids have passed away, like you said yours have. And it's just an extra hard day. And if you're in that situation like Tony, one of the best things you can do for Mother's Day is just make sure it's a good day for others. I think that's a great idea. Tony, thank you for calling and sharing all of that. And thanks for listening to the Pastor Scott Show. 888-528-2557. Best and worst Mother's Day gifts, as Mother's Day is coming up this Sunday. Michelle in Ojai, welcome to the Pastor Scott Show.
Hi.
Hi, Michelle.
I just wanted to give an input on. Hi. I just wanted to give an input on the best Mother's Day I ever had.
Yeah.
And it was several years ago. My daughter lives out of state, so I knew I wasn't going to see her. But she was really clever, and she paid attention to all my favorite things. So she sent me a real simple card. I don't even remember what the card said. But in the card was a scavenger hunt. And she sent me all over town with just addresses of my favorite place to go get a cupcake, or my favorite place to go get a T-shirt. They were all just real simple things. But I spent the whole day kind of like shopping with my daughter without her there.
That's really really creative.
Yeah, I thought so too. So it was kind of like a day with my daughter without my daughter.
Yeah. Well, you know what, Michelle? I think you've inspired some people. That's a really good idea. And I think the thoughtfulness of that is a big part of the gift.
I just remember that she sent me a real small, simple bouquet, and then there was a card, and the card said, let's go on a scavenger hunt together. And it was really cool because once I walked up, all these people were like, oh, you're the person we've been waiting for you. We've been waiting to see who you are. It was really cool.
So did she already buy the cupcake and stuff for you?
Yes.
Oh,
She
that's
had
awesome.
called ahead and bought things online, or had she had paid over the phone, and so it was like spending a whole day with my daughter. So it was pretty cool.
That's pretty cool. Thank you for sharing that, Michelle. See, it's the effort. Making an effort, I think, matters a whole lot. That's very creative. Brian in Simi Valley, welcome to the Pastor Scott Show.
Good afternoon, brother. I just want to tell all the guys, do not buy your wife a vacuum for Mother's Day. My father actually did that. My father actually did that when I was a youngster. Even I, at 7 years old, thought, what the heck was he doing? And yeah, it didn't go over very well.
Even as a 7-year-old, Dad, this is, why are we in the Hoover shop right now?
Every time she used the vacuum, she cursed up and down about it.
Yeah, guys, it should be something that has to do with, relaxing, probably, not making housework easier.
Exactly.
Get the vacuum on a day that doesn't matter. She might appreciate it, but not on Mother's Day. That's excellent advice, Brian. Thanks for sharing that.
You and all the listeners have a blessed day.
Thank you. You too, Brian. This is the Pastor Scott Show. You can go to pastorscottshow.com to connect with us online and find our podcast, our live stream, and our social media at Pastor Scott Show. This Sunday is Mother's Day. So if you have not figured that out yet, now is your 2-minute warning. You've got plenty of time, lots of time for plays, lots of time to think it through, some time to be creative, and you don't want to get to that point where it's Saturday night or Sunday morning on Mother's Day, and you're going to Costco for the gift cards, and you're going to Uber Eats to deliver the flowers or whatever. You just don't want to do that. So this is your fair warning. Hey, on Friday, when we do Open Line Friday, like we always do, you can call about anything, of course, on Friday, but we'll also give you a chance to give a shout out to your mom, and maybe you get the podcast and you say, "Hey, Mom, I said I love you on the Pastor Scott Show," and you can send her that. That's something, right? This is the Pastor Scott Show. Once again, go to pastorscottshow.com to connect with us online. We will be back in just 4 minutes as the Pastor Scott Show, what is today? Wednesday edition continues in a moment. Don't go away. Hey, one last thing is one of the things you can really do for yourself, which, for me, it helped my wife, Mother's Day or any time, as I was snoring so bad, I was keeping her awake. And she was about to kick me out of the room and send me down the hall. And I didn't want that. There were a whole bunch of reasons, but I knew I needed to do something. And I knew I probably had sleep apnea, and I didn't want the CPAP machine. That's not very romantic either. All of those kinds of things. Well, I went to go see Dr. Eddie Simon because he has a different solution. He's right here in Los Angeles, and his solution is a mouthpiece. It fits perfectly in your mouth. If you go to his office, they will examine your head, your neck, your throat, your nose, and this mouthpiece is custom made. It's not something pulls off the shelf. It puts your jaw and your tongue in the right position while you sleep. It's very comfortable, and it opens up your airway. It stopped my snoring, it relieved my sleep apnea, and I wake up feeling great. Go see Dr. Eddie Simon to see if this works for you. Call 800-92-SMILE. That's 800-927-6453. Dr. Eddie Simon, TMJExpert.com, 800-92-SMILE. We'll be right back. Good afternoon, everybody. It is Wednesday. We're live on the Pastor Scott Show. We talk about issues of the day from a Christian perspective. Phone number, if you want to join the conversation, is 888-528-2557. 888-528-2557. Go to PastorScottShow.com to connect with us online. Let's start with 21-1. Go ahead, sir.
I believe in that healthcare is a right, not a privilege, that it should be universal, affordable, and high quality. But the fact is, Javier, I've been in enough forums with you where I've heard you say you're for it, and I've heard you say you're against it.
I've never said I'm against it.
Hold it.
I've never said it.
Let me finish. I've heard you say that you're against it.
And if it's such a great forum that I said it in.
Can I finish?
If you could just point the forum that I said it, because I've never said it. So
we've been at many forums where you said it, but let me finish the point. It's a $500 billion price tag. You need the federal government. You need Donald Trump to approve it. Our budget is only 350 plus, and next year we're looking at $18 to $35 billion deficit. People like you are the reason why we keep on spending more than we got.
That was gubernatorial candidate Antonio Villaraigosa at the governor's debate last night. There's a whole bunch of these debates. You know why that is? It's because people like saying gubernatorial. There's another one tonight. Anyway, that was him last night, and he began that answer to that question with this comment. Go ahead, sir.
I believe in that healthcare is a right.
And I thought, a lot of what we've seen in our politics, he says healthcare is a right. And, I think that most people would agree that if you're hurt or you're sick and you need some kind of health care, somebody should tend to you, right? That you should get health care. However, the word right is very loaded. So what's a right? Is health care a right? What are the rights that we actually have? And you hear politicians talking about this all the time. What are the rights that we have? 888-528-2557. And I say that because is healthcare a right, for example, or is it a privilege? Or is it a benefit? What is it? Healthcare, I think most people would agree, even if you're here illegally, like a big part of the discussion is should the state of California be covering people who are here illegally, with health insurance, basically. A lot of people, probably most people would say no to that question, but not everybody. However, if someone who's here illegally breaks their arm or they've got an injury, they need to go to the emergency room, most people would say, I think almost everybody, you'd be a terrible person. I think if you say, no, just don't set the arm, we're not going to treat that person. You're going to, right? There's compassion and humanity behind it. But in the language, what is a right? Is healthcare a right? That's the way things were portrayed very often in the debate last night where there was discussion about right. And it's a claim or a promise that many politicians are making. Let's go to 13-1.
The question, I think, is trying to aim at, do you support CalCare, California having its own state-run single-payer system, yes or no?
Is that a question?
Sure, go ahead.
As I said, when I was Secretary of Health and Human Services, I was able to.
So is that a yes or a no?
I'm answering the question.
Okay.
So the most important thing about having a Medicare for all plan is that it includes everyone for all. And what we have to do is get to the point where we are covering everyone with something like Medicare for all. So I am absolutely for Medicare for all. And we will get there. We'll build towards it because that's the way you get folks covered. Yeah. That's the way I did it.
Congresswoman Porter, then Mary Ragosa. Congresswoman. So you have this debate about what's called single payer, which is California government healthcare. So these are California politicians some of them are promising that we're going to have universal coverage in California for whomever is here. Single payer is meaning the government pays. You don't have other insurance anymore. That's what single payer means. Javier Becerra, who is responding there to Katie Porter, he's got a lot of nuance about it. Medicare for all, federal government involved, and earlier you heard Antonio Villaraigosa talk about the costs that are involved, because that's one of the big issues, is that this costs a lot. To do what Katie Porter is presenting, and I think Tom Steyer agrees generally to that same thing, would more than double the entire budget of the entire state.
What's wrong with that?
What's wrong with that is we don't have the money.
California is in trouble.
So when you call something a right to health care, what does that mean? What's the difference between rights and privileges or benefits? What's the correct term, and how do we navigate that? 888-528-2557 is the number, 888-528-2557. Peter in Thousand Oaks, welcome to the Pastor Scott Show.
Hey, Pastor Scott, thanks for taking my call.
Hi, Peter.
So I really believe that as long as we're paying, we're taxpayers, that we should have health care, that it is a right. And I say that because, there's trillions and trillions of dollars spent on these endless wars that have been going on for 20 plus years in the Middle East, when a fraction of that could be spent on health care for everybody, and it's not gonna, without impeding or anything else. So I think it's just a matter of where we prioritize. Instead of being out in the Middle East for the last 20 years, I think everybody could have had health care. And I think that's where most taxpayers would want their money going.
Do you think it's a right, or is it a privilege of the taxpayer? Meaning I'm a taxpayer, so then I get the benefit of having health care, in your opinion?
Yeah.
Or is it what's
I
the
believe
difference?
It is the right of a taxpayer.
So is it a privilege or is it a right?
A right. As long as you're paying taxes, it's a right.
Okay, so in your view, it's got to be, it's part of what I'm getting at is the difference between rights and benefits. Because rights mean you have to have it. It comes from God, not the government. Right is how you're created, right? So we have certain inalienable rights, and rights go on to.
I guess the better word would be entitled.
Okay.
Maybe not right. Maybe not a right as far as how you're describing it. But there's too many countries that do it and have proven that it can be done. So the fact that we're the richest country, arguably, in the world, but we choose to spend money in the Middle East, I think we could do both. We could spend a fraction of what we're spending in the Middle East, give health care to the people that are paying taxes, because, again, the taxes are taken from us, but we don't have much of a say in what goes with it.
It's an interesting thing. You get a lot more say if you go vote, but most people don't vote.
Well, that's a good thing, too.
Peter, thank you for calling the Pastor Scott Show, 888-528-2557. So what are the rights? Is health care a right? Is education a right? Or is it a privilege? The phrase right is used. He said entitlement, which is technically the better word, actually, that a lot of the health care, when it comes from government health care, it's an entitlement. What is it? 888-528-2557. Dallas in San Diego, welcome to the Pastor Scott Show.
Hey, thank you for putting me on, Pastor Scott. I don't think it's really a right.
So how would you define it? So when you have politicians who call things a right, that we have a right to certain things, what makes something a right versus an entitlement?
Well, the idea is that people always will use whatever they can at no cost, and they don't treat it with the same respect that they would treat something they're having to pay for. When your people just give you a car, and any time you need another car, you just get one. You don't take care of it. You don't take care of yourself. And as far as single payer goes, if you like single payer insurance, if you like the DMV, you're going to love single payer insurance.
It's something important to recognize. There's a difference between coverage, health coverage, and health care. Being covered is one thing. Getting good care is a whole different thing. And thank you for calling, Dallas. Pastor Scott Show, 888-528-2557. We're talking about the rights that we have. What's the difference between rights And is healthcare a right? We have politicians in these gubernatorial debates here in California debating over whether or not healthcare is a right. What makes something a right versus a privilege? Like he was just talking about, you if you have single payer, if it's government healthcare, there's no insurance. Does that make it a right? Do we have a right to that, regardless of how much it costs, regardless of what kind of care? Is it worth having DMV care? Or one of the things that people say is going to be the result of that is what's called two-tiered care. Most people will be on terrible government health care, but people with enough money will have concierge care, and they just go buy their health care. And they will have the better hospitals, the better doctors, the better everything, and everyone else won't. That's one of the concerns about the system and where it's headed one way or the other. I think it might be headed that way. 888-528-2557. Is healthcare a right? What other rights do we have that we hear our politicians talking about? What makes something a right? 888-528-2557. Eric in San Diego, welcome to the Pastor Scott Show.
Hi, it's a privilege. I mean, we can't force the doctors to go to school so much more, get that degree, be able to treat us. And the guy said it perfectly, the DMV. If you like the DMV, let's have the government in control of it. And let's not forget hospice care should be a word that goes through your mind. The second the government gets involved, people spend out of control amounts. Everybody in the private sector takes advantage of somebody not paying attention to how much they're spending. It would ruin us. The second you get our government involved in America, in my opinion, whatever it is gets ruined. I mean, we see it time and time again.
The hospice care, it kills me, this whole thing. So they shut down 500 hospices right here in Los Angeles. There's no more money. You guys are closed. There were zero complaints. None. Nobody said, hey, my hospice care was just ended. None of these hospice agencies said, hey, we got patients. You need to pay us. Zero. That should tell you a lot about how government is dealing with the health care, with all of that.
Exactly.
So for you would say health care is a privilege, not a right.
It's a privilege. Yep. And I'm trying to get my daughter to go into nursing because it's going to be a steady job.
Well, we'll always have sick people, for sure. And you're going to always need doctors and nurses until the robots are doing it, I guess, probably. Right? Eric, thanks for calling the Pastor Scott Show. 888-528-2557. 888-528-2557. Is healthcare a right, a privilege, an entitlement, a benefit? What would you call it, since we have so many politicians calling it and other things a right? What makes something a human right? Right? That's the way that it is described. 888-528-2557. Daniel in Reseda, welcome to the Pastor Scott Show.
Hey, Pastor Scott, how you doing today?
Good. Daniel, how are you?
Never better. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Hey, so I believe with the rights to the benefit of healthcare, I believe that it's a benefit to have healthcare here if it was provided by the government. But not everyone is going to, like we all know, we're not going to expect the total coverage that we all want if we're going to get it for free. And I think everyone understands that part. Like if everyone's, going to get free health coverage or care, then how well is the service going to be for everybody, versus people putting premiums out of pocket.
Well, yeah.
But in other, yeah.
And the interesting thing about it, if it's a right, then wouldn't we all have the right to the same health care? Like if it's a right, why does somebody get better health care than I get? Why would that happen, right? That gets into the problem of right and where that goes.
Yeah, and this isn't to knock anything, but where people don't have the funds, or if they're say homeless, they technically still have the right to get, if something were to happen to them medically, they'll get taken care of, versus if say somebody that's working class goes into a hospital and they have to pay a big premium for whatever insurance or, whatever, let's say a procedure you need done, you're going to have to pay that out of pocket. So it's very contradictory.
It's an interesting thing because from a compassion standpoint, it would be very difficult for someone to say, I don't think the homeless person should get care if they broke their arm or they had a wound of some kind, right? How could you say that? And the taxpayers ultimately pay for it. Right. So some of the argument is if we were giving people more regular preventative care than it would save money by people going into the emergency room where we do care for them. And, there's a lot of nuance to all of that, but what makes something a right? Thank you, Daniel, for calling the Pastor Scott Show. Pastor Scott Show number, 888-528-2557 to join the conversation, 888-528-2557. Is healthcare a right? 888-528-2557, a human right. Norm in Redlands, welcome to the Pastor Scott Show.
Hey, hello. No, I don't think it's a right. Legal rights in this country are emanated from the Constitution, and there's no right in the Constitution for paid health care, despite what some politicians would like to say. So,
it's not life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, health care, education, transgender rights, abortion rights. We attach rights to a whole lot of stuff today.
Exactly, and they usually wind up in the Supreme Court.
And the Supreme Court tosses it, by the way. From a legal standpoint, right is a very important word, but we apply it.
That's correct.
We apply it to a lot of stuff that we all probably want in some cases, but we also apply it to things that are controversial. It's a manipulative word, also.
Right, but when you talk about legal rights in this country, again, they emanate from the Constitution.
That's correct. Thank you, Norm, for calling the Pastor Scott Show. 888-528-2557 is the number. What he's talking about is a distinction that we really have to understand, because the word right, we have certain inalienable rights. And that's different than privileges or benefits or entitlements. There are certain rights that come to you because you're a human being. And then there are certain rights that you have because they're granted to you by the Constitution or the law. And what's the difference? And is healthcare a right? Is education a right? What about transgender care? Is that a right? Abortion care, is that a right? There's a whole lot of different things. Is internet access a right? Is childcare a right? Is joining a union a right? All of these things we call rights in our politicians today. What makes something a right versus a privilege or a benefit? 888-528-2557. Duncan in Encino, welcome to the Pastor Scott Show.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Duncan. How are you?
All right. So originally I called in because I wanted to discuss not so much the fact that there's a right to health care as much as the issue is the cost of medical care has gotten so astronomical because of the insurance companies, where it's made it unaffordable. But unfortunately, the previous caller, just so you know, I am an attorney.
Yeah.
And so I want to kind of clarify that the Constitution doesn't grant any rights.
That's correct.
What it does is it limits the government's ability to infringe upon those rights. And so I think there's a lot of confusion in the general public. They think that these rights are basically granted to them by the Constitution when the Constitution doesn't grant any rights whatsoever.
So explain what that means, the difference between, some people would say the Constitution gives you the right to free speech, right to assembly, religion, those things. What's the difference between rights that come from God and rights that are, or maybe that's the wrong word, from the government?
So what it is you have the right to free speech. And what the Constitution does is it limits the government's ability to impede on that right. For example, you have the right to say whatever you want, but however, due to things, they realize, well, you can't really have the right to say everything. Like, the famous joke about saying hi, Jack, to your buddy on an airplane, right? So the government can limit your free speech in certain situations, such as like fighting words. If there's something that happens with words that are said with the intent to create a fight, that is not governmentally protected free speech. And then also free speech is dependent on location. So the government can limit your speech more on government-controlled property than it can in, like, public property or personal property. So if you go through and you actually read the Constitution, which I think a lot of these people that scream about their constitutionally given rights have never actually read it, and taking a look at some of the case law that helps define what the limitations the government can put on this speech, you begin to see that there's quite a bit of difference between what people assume from never reading and what they actually know.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, what you don't know makes things a lot more difficult because people get very emotional and the education and the facts get left out.
So when you hear a politician say you have a right to something, we're talking about healthcare, but there's a right to unionize, a right to have the internet, a right to for paid leave, a right to retirement, a right to Social Security. How should that be phrased differently?
Well, you got to realize too, government politicians, their job is based on their ability to get votes and be elected.
Right, they're being manipulated.
So they are going to play. They're going to play to the lowest common denominator. What can they say that will get them the most votes? And in this particular instance, if they say, like, "Oh, I'm standing up for your rights granted by the Constitution," they may hopefully know that that statement is incorrect. But they make that statement because they're trying to evoke an emotion and a support from people who would be voting.
I think everybody needs to understand that there's so much of evoking emotion today in politics. There's always been a part of that. But I think now it drives more people emotion than thinking about it. Right?
Well, of course. I mean, when you hear all these people that talk about I feel, I want, I deserve, then you start to have issues. There was a statement made back in the day that when people start voting for their own best interests, not the best interests of the country's in trouble.
That's right.
And that's what the politicians, they don't care about the forward going of the country. They care about their personal career.
I think everybody should be considering that. Duncan, thank you for calling the Pastor Scott Show and helping us out with that. 888-528-2557. So when you hear that, what is healthcare? Is it a right, privilege? What would you say? And when you think about it, politicians trying to make some emotional plea, how do you navigate that and speak the truth? This is the Pastor Scott Show. Stephen and Steve will get your calls when the Pastor Scott Show continues in a moment. 888-528-2557 is the number. We'll be right back. Scott. Welcome back. We're live. It's the Pastor Scott Show. Go to pastorscottshow.com to connect with us online, pastorscottshow.com. We're talking about what is a right in our gubernatorial debates that we're having many of all of a sudden. What is a right versus a privilege or a benefit or an entitlement? What makes something a right? Is healthcare a right? 13-2.
Covering everyone with something is not single payer. It's not even federal Medicare for all. But you won't say that whether you support California having its own state-run single-payer system. Look, Tom ran against single-payer in his presidency before he changed his mind and has decided to run for single-payer. I'm not disputing that, Tom. I'm making sure everyone knows. And you've been consistent on this point. You've been consistent.
I'm going to answer that.
But I want Javier to answer the question. Do you support California having its own single-payer system? Yes or no?
And Katie, the answer there is that Californians don't care what you call it so long as they have affordable health care that they can use to take their child to the doctor or the hospital.
In last night's gubernatorial debate, Katie Porter and Javier Becerra were going back and forth on that little tit for tat there about what kind of health care should be provided and what's a right. Antonio Villaraigosa calls it a right. Katie Porter wants single payer, meaning it's government health care. You don't pay anything into it. It all comes from the taxpayer, and all of this is a right. Becerra is a little bit wishy-washy on some of that and wants some from the federal government. And Antonio Villaraigosa, as much as he calls it a right, what's interesting is he calls it a right. That's the first thing he says. But then he points this out, 21-2.
So at the end of the day, let's be clear about this. This is pie in the sky. Yes, we all would like to have health care that's affordable.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
But we won't have a
Secretary Becerra, your response to that argument.
He calls the idea of single-payer health care in California pie in the sky. And the reason he's pointing that out is because it would cost more than double the entire budget of the state in order to do that. And of course, it's going to be much more than that because I always get those numbers wrong. And this gets into sort of the philosophy about what rights are versus privileges or benefits. You know, if it is a right, then how can you be denied that for money? And that's kind of the term, right? Is that if you just can't afford something and you don't get it, whether it's healthcare or maybe it's education or important things that everybody agrees everybody should have, right? What makes something a right? Where does that come from? A human right. 888-528-2557. Stephen in Ojai, welcome to the Pastor Scott Show.
Hi. My thoughts is that the debate on health care, it's a privilege because if we were to use the term right as it applies to the Constitution, a legal right, and if government should provide something to the population because it's a right, then it would make sense that the government would have to provide every citizen a firearm because of the Second Amendment, because that's a right. But I don't think the government's going to do that. So I think we're using the term incorrectly. I think the correct term is entitlement. But also, at the end of the day, healthcare is extremely expensive. And if we need to find a way to provide healthcare more efficiently and at a better cost, because right now healthcare is, it's kind of broken in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think the solution is to have government pay for everything, because if the second government starts paying for something, costs go out of control, and then that removes competition from the equation. That removes any incentive to provide better and better quality and better research.
It doesn't fix the problems that we know are actually there that ought to be dealt with ultimately. And but I think the point that you're making there about the fact that the government doesn't buy everybody a gun, even though you have a right to have one, is part of the distinction of what rights are versus benefits or entitlements or even privileges. Stephen, thanks for calling the Pastor Scott Show. 888-528-2557. Steve in Corona, welcome to the Pastor Scott Show.
Hi, Pastor Scott. Happy Wednesday to you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyway, what I see is this. When there are only a few people that have rights, fortunately, it's usually 80% of people that have rights. The other 20 are not, because those that have rights, you can have a right hand, a right leg, a right ear, or right eye, for that matter. Everybody else is probably left-handed. So as far as rights are concerned, it's those people who are born with the right side in their favor versus the left side. That's the only right I could see.
So
other than that, it's a joke, yes. But that's why, other than that, as far as healthcare is concerned, if you can afford it, that's great. But you got to remember, when you have healthcare and you pay it, the insurance company is going to pay the claim, and sometimes it could be 4 times, 5 times more than the actual cost of that item.
Well, that happens a lot. That's a big issue right there.
Yeah.
But the other side of it is the insurance company that you're paying, they can also say no to your care.
Yes.
They don't have to do it, right? The government, when the government's in charge, Medicare says no sometimes. And if you have single payer, there's no one to object to. It's just no. And that is a big part of the issue on what makes something a right versus an entitlement. And Steve, I'm glad that you said it was a joke. We had a caller a long time ago who tried to make some theological argument about right-handed people and left-handed people. And I thought, it was like years ago. And I thought, is this the same guy? Jose's left-handed. He's like, I have no rights at all because I'm left-handed. Steve,
I can see that.
Yes, thanks for calling, Steve. 888-528-2557. There is something to that, though, by the way. My dad's left-handed, and it used to be something that people frowned upon. If you're left-handed and older, you were forced sort of to do things right-handed, and most things are made for right-handed people, right? But there was like discrimination in a way against left-handed people. Let's not go down that road right now. So I want to talk about rights. So when we talk about rights, why would all of these politicians who are saying, let's have single-payer health care, let's have government health care, why are they using the term right and not the term entitlement? Why are they doing that? Why do they say we should have an entitlement of health care, that the government should pay, the taxpayers should pay for everybody's health care? Why do we call it a right and not an entitlement or a privilege? 888-528-2557. Pastor Scott Show. Eric in Corona, welcome to the Pastor Scott Show.
Hey, Pastor Scott, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Hey, so far be it from me, because I went to business school, not law school, to get into a disagreement with
most
a
of us,
lawyer.
most people did not go to law school.
Yeah. I'm just, before I make my point, I'm making that clear, so just in case the guy calls back. But I will make the point because I disagree with him on this point where he says that the government simply protects rights against the government when the Fifth Amendment specifically says guarantee due process. It says it again in the Second Amendment, guarantees jury trial. So it's not just government protecting us from itself. It's also government protecting rights for you. In other words, if I get arrested, I have a right to not only have a lawyer, but have the government pay for that lawyer.
Right.
Okay. Now, that being said, whatever is a right is whatever in a constitutional republic, whatever is a right is anything that legislative. And I'll give you an example if you give me a second. So in 1986, Ronald Reagan passed a law commonly known as COBRA, meaning that emergency rooms are open to anyone, regardless of their ability to pay or their citizenship status. They are guaranteed a right to be seen and treated by a doctor. So because that's a law, guess what? That's a right.
Is it a right or is it an entitlement?
It's a right. It's a right because it's written into the law. I have a legal right to walk into any emergency room and be treated. That is a right.
So in the nuance of it,
right.
in the nuance of it, I think most people would say it the way you say it, right? But in the nuance of it, I think where the attorney is coming from is the attorney would say it's not a right because the government can also end that law and you no longer get paid for if you go into the emergency room. Therefore, it's not a human right. A human right is given to you on the basis of your humanity alone.
There is not a single human right in the first 10 amendments, which is the Bill of Rights, right? There's not a single
That's correct.
human right.
It would be different.
So my point is, to your argument is it a right? In a constitutional republic, it's a right if you have the ability to do it. That's what a right is, my ability to do something, right? So my example I gave you is I can, without any insurance, walk into a hospital and be treated, regardless of my citizenship, regardless of my ability to pay. That is a right.
That is your right. So here's the interesting question, because we're coming up on the break. So this is the nuance. Is it's the same right because that can be taken away from you. The government could one day say, you know what, we're not doing that anymore.
But it has to be legislated away, just like it was legislated in.
That's right. I mean, we could have an amendment that gets rid of, one of the amendments, right, and take away that right. So what's the difference between a right the job of the government, the purpose of the government, a right that we believe are certain inalienable rights that come from the Creator, as we would say, or
completely different,
or rights? It's completely different. I think that is the key thing. It's completely different. It's a different thing.
Yes. So inalienable rights. Well, I don't want to get into that part again. I'm not a lawyer, but I will say this: that in the Bill of Rights, when we said that's why they call Bill of Rights.
We're almost at the break.
You have a right to do that. Yeah. So in other words, so that was legislated in. So anything in a constitutional republic that is legislated in is a right. I have a right to bear an arm. I have a right to speak.
I'm coming up to the break, Eric, but I'm coming up to the break. I appreciate your call. 888-528-2557. So one of the things he said there is that the inalienable rights in the Declaration is completely different, and that's correct. So what's the difference between those rights and the rights that are in the Bill of Rights? We'll talk about that when we come back. Lori, Simon, Yellowfeather, Patricia, others will get your calls when we come back. Pastor Scott Show, 888-528-2557. Don't go away. We'll be back in 4 minutes. Welcome back, everybody. Pastor Scott Show. We're live on Wednesday, 888-528-2557. Talking about rights versus privileges, benefits, different ways of saying it. I'll get your calls here in a moment. A privilege that you have is the ability to invest your income into retirement. And it's not a right. You don't have to do it. Government doesn't have to do it for you. You get to do it yourself. I want to tell you about Sanctuary Metals. Sanctuary Metals is a way to protect your retirement in these uncertain times that will put your retirement into physical gold and silver. You can actually move part of your IRA or 401k into gold and silver. Many people are doing that today because of the uncertainty of our times. If you've got an old retirement account, maybe from a previous employer, or if you're over 59 and a half, you might be able to roll it over with no taxes and no penalties if you qualify. It takes about 15 minutes to get started with the team over at Sanctuary Metals. They walk you through everything over the phone. They handle the paperwork. They are the custodian of all of it. Your metals are stored safely in IRS-approved vaults, giving you peace of mind. Call Sanctuary Metals today, 800-80 9877. That's 800-801-9877. When you call, make sure you tell them that Pastor Scott sent you to see if you qualify for a no-fee-for-life precious metals IRA. You can learn more online at sanctuarymetals.com. That's sanctuarymetals.com. That phone number again is 800-801-9877. Past performance does not guarantee future results. It's because it's not a right. That's how that goes. All right, 888-528-2557. In the gubernatorial debate, there's another one of those tonight.
California's in trouble.
They are. And there's a city of L.A. mayoral debate coming up right after the Pastor Scott show. I'm always glad when they start those after we're done here at 5 o'clock. That one might be the story. We'll have to see how that goes. But one of the arguments last night was about whether or not health care is a right. And even though the fact that the health care things that are being promoted will cost twice as much as the entire budget of California, even more than that, maybe 3 times as much in some estimates. So what makes something a right versus a privilege? 888-528-2557. Simon in West Covina, welcome to the Pastor Scott Show.
Yeah, well, it's
Or
Simeon.
Simeon. Sorry about that. Says Simeon here. I just misread it.
There you go. That's all good. Hey, we used to have the right to have insurance or not have insurance in the state of California, and then it goes to we have to pay for it. Now we're paying for it for more than ourselves, and that's the difficult part. Now, as good, honest people and working class, we all want to take care of other people, but we don't want it abused as well. And I think that's the difference. It's not a right. We don't have the right to have insurance. We're forced to have insurance in the state, and we're forced to pay for it for a multitude of other people. And I believe, probably 3 or 4 to 1 for what we pay for, other than ourselves. I remember back in the 70s, we were paying for our own insurance for a family of 4 at under $400 a month, and the insurance companies were doing well. Of course, cost of living's gone up and so forth like that. But it doesn't justify a family of 2 paying near $20,000 a year for medical insurance. It just doesn't make sense. So I don't think it's a right. Just as somebody said a little earlier, that you have the right to bear arms doesn't mean you have to have one. You can buy one if you choose, or you cannot buy one if you choose.
That's a very interesting way to talk about what is a right, because you don't have to have something. You can also have a right to not do something. And
Exactly.
And that is in the Constitution and in our philosophy. We'll get to this. I'll try to explain this a little bit better in a minute. But that's a big nuance that matters. Is if you can't really deny if you're going to pay taxes. You have a right to vote. And you vote, but those people, you give away your rights basically to those people while they're in office, and then they get to spend your money how they want to, which is one of the problems. Thank you for calling, Simeon. Thank you very much, Patricia in Huntington Beach. I'm guessing there. Patricia, you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Go ahead, Patricia.
Pastor Scott, may I ask you a question regarding this subject?
Yes.
Would you consider it a right or a privilege if a person has health care due to the fact that they've had their salaries automatically deducted for exactly that, especially for one who worked for 38 years, such as me?
Is it a right or a privilege because you've paid into it, like Social Security or for Medicare?
Yes.
Yeah. It depends on how you want to use the word. Like, you're entitled to it because you paid for it. So
Right.
the problem with rights is that if the government were to go bankrupt, you're going to lose that. Right, that's the scary part about the national debt, for example, and other stuff, is that entitlements are going to be the first things to go. And it's not a human right from that standpoint. But the emotional side of it is we usually use the word right in that regard, right? And we don't like the idea that somebody might not get treatment for their health problems. That's why we have the benefit, right? That's why we have Medicare. Whether you agree with government being involved or not, it's a whole other question. But the reason we do is because we think that people ought to be able to get care. Does that make sense?
Well, again, it's only right if we have done the work. I mean, we didn't just come across, into this country and just expect that it be a privilege to just get free health care. I don't think that's right at all. I think that...
Well, nothing is free. I mean, I think that's something that, that's another term that gets thrown around in these debates, right? It's free health care. It's not free at all.
No.
You're going to pay through the nose for it. And it just comes through taxes. Nothing is free. They should ban the word free from these debates. There's not one thing that's free anywhere.
No.
Then thank you for calling, Patricia. And Lori in Santa Barbara, welcome to the Pastor Scott Show.
Hi, Pastor Scott. I'm calling in I didn't hear any scripture or any Bible reference, so I might have missed it, but it doesn't matter what you call health care, a right, a benefit, an entitlement, if you paid your deductible or your copay. It is in the scripture, Jesus said, when you take care of the sick, you do it unto me. So for me, that's all that matters. I'm not a politician, so however they choose to do it. But if the government's not doing it and the church is not doing it, then you're going to have people dying on the streets like in India, or dying in front of the non-accessible emergency room, or burying their dead in public parks.
Right.
And we'll see how that works out for everybody. So I just want to put that out there because I think most of the people that are calling in have insurance. Okay, so there was a time when there was no such thing, and it was the church that rose up and started the hospitals and the orphanages and all that. So there may be another way to do this, but either way, everybody who's still here, if they don't get raptured out when the mark of the beast comes out, we're going to see this anyways, because nobody will have access to health care.
It's
unless they take whatever the mark is. So you can comment, after that, like expound on what I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, I think that you're right that morally people agree that we should that people need to care for people. And you're right. We as Christians are supposed to take care of the sick. We should be concerned about this subject. And we can debate whether the government should do it or how taxpayers do it or other things. But this is why I think it's important. So the issue then is rights. Appreciate your call, Lori. Here's some of the difference. Now, there's always nuance in the way people talk about this, but the reason that this matters when we're talking about it in politics is because the words are used very emotionally. Let's go to clip number 12.
6 of the people here don't even know who deports anyone. They just want emotions to rule the day, so you support them because they don't even know what the governor can and can't do. Or if they do, they're lying to you.
That was Chad Bianco, and they were talking about immigration there, a lot of different subjects, who has rights. They were talking about should illegal immigrants have a right to health care and those kinds of things. And he's pointing out the emotion behind things because you do care. And as a Christian, you should care about taking care of the poor and the sick. At the same time, if you don't have the money, you have to come up with another way to do it, right? And that's the thing that's getting promised is when you're making a promise of single-payer health care and it's going to cost more than twice as much as the entire budget of the state, that's not real. That's why Antonio Villaraigosa called it pie in the sky. It's just about emotion and getting votes. Or I'm going to do this, I'm going to fight Trump, I'm going to do these things. And they all make these promises. And a lot of it is driven from emotion because we don't think about it this way. And rights is one of those words that we use in place of entitlements because entitlements is scary. Or privileges, sometimes it sounds that some people get it and some people don't, right? It's a reality, but it doesn't feel right because it's not the same. But here's the deal. Rights are inherent entitlements that belong to individuals simply by virtue of the fact that they're human beings. In the framework of the United States, the Judeo-Christian framing, it's a big part of who we are and how we came to even care about this in the West in particular, is that we have certain rights endowed by our Creator, inalienable. You can't sell them, you can't revoke them, there's no condition on behavior for life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. And some people call them, it seems like the wrong word, right? But negative rights. And what that means is they restrain others from, especially the government, from interfering with your life, liberty, or your property. That's what that means. There are certain rights that require nothing from anyone else except for non-interference. That you have a right to life, liberty, and your pursuit of happiness or property is mainly what that means. And everyone else should just stay out of your way. So that doesn't require anyone else to do anything except get out of your way. Privileges are different. They're granted by an authority. They're granted by the Constitution, and they're called rights in the Bill of Rights. They're granted by an authority, the government, and it can be your employer. It gives you certain employee rights, those kinds of things. However, they're different than your other rights. They can be modified, restricted, taken away. They're conditional. As a human being, you're not guaranteed those things because you got to have the money. You got to have the system. You got to have the infrastructure. There's things that are involved with all of that. So negative rights, they protect you from interference. They cost only restraint from other people. Positive rights entitle you to something. Goods, services, outcomes, but they impose duties on someone else, taxpayers, doctors, teachers, employers. And the reason we don't like the word, entitlements is that it reminds us of that. The reason politicians will use rights for everything, it's not just healthcare, it's housing, it's to join a union, it's a whole bunch of stuff that actually you don't have a right to that, but you might have an entitlement by law or by Constitution to that. Just think about that as you watch these things. And we're out of time. This will come up again. Oscar, I won't have time for your call. Pastor Scott Show, pastorscottshow.com is how you follow us and find the podcast, pastorscottshow.com. We'll see you tomorrow live from 3 to 5. Good night.